One of the most frequent questions I get is, how do you get started in cybersecurity? So I thought tonight I'd put together a quick video of my suggestion. I am a blue team guy, so I'm going to stick to how do you become a SOC analyst, how do you become a sim engineer, that type of role. I'm going to stay away from pen testing. I just don't have sufficient knowledge about how to get into those types of careers, so I'm not going to pretend I do. Um, I will say that there are a lot of ways to get into all jobs in security, and I personally, when I'm hiring for SOC roles and security engineer roles, I look for diversity. So this is one of many ways to kind of get there, but it is a way that I believe is currently fairly effective and budget friendly. There's some way more expensive ways, depending on who's funding this journey for you. But here's what I would probably do if I were trying to get into cybersecurity currently. Um, First up, I'm going to call it a choose your own adventure because you have some choices to make early on. One of the things that I think you need is some foundational knowledge to get started in a career at all in IT and cybersecurity eventually. And what I mean by that is this is your foundational, functional IT stuff. How do computers work? How do networks work? How do servers work? How does DNS work? How does the internet work? How do firewalls function? All those kinds of things. So when you're thinking certifications, you're thinking your A pluses, your network pluses. You don't need the cert; they help on paper, but they're kind of expensive for what they are, honestly. So you might skip the cert, but just learn the information. The professor master training videos that go along with those certs, top notch for what they teach. But that's what I mean by foundational knowledge. You got to know what the environment you're trying to secure, at a fundamental level, how it functions. And the better you know it, the better off you're going to be because the better you can spot evil in those environments if you know what normal looks like. From there, you're going to probably want some foundational experience. I have hired people directly out of school with no prior IT experience. It's rare. It takes a special person. The timing has to be right. The team has to be capable of taking on that level of training currently. So the stars really have to align for that to be appropriate for our groups. But it can happen. So you can try it. Um, but for most people, you're going to want to start on a help desk in an MSP somewhere. I really like MSPs. I think they'll give you the most experience and most exposure in the shortest amount of time to kind of really ramp up that experience level. And frankly, most of them kind of let you do it as much work as you're willing to. So if you really want to put pedal to the metal, you'll get access to all kinds of technology really, really quick. Um, but don't necessarily trust most MSPs for good security practices, is what I would say. Not all MSPs are great at security. They're very good at IT management most of the time. So learn that. Now, once you kind of have those background skill sets, um, you need to start getting some security specific information in your brain, right? And this is where it gets really, really confusing for people because cybersecurity is an enormous place. When we look at the security certification roadmap on the Paul Jeremy website, there's 473 certs as of January, and there's even more now. This is massive. Like trying to choose from this is crazy if you don't know what any of this stuff is. So, um, I'm going to try to narrow it down for you. First and foremost, I think that most people, if they have a foundational level of knowledge, really they need help shifting from being on a help desk to being in a SOC. The role of a help desk most of the time, or even a knock, is getting something that's broken back online and working. So you're very focused on a fix. The focus of a SOC is assessing a situation to understand the risk to an organization. So you have to get out of the mindset of alert come in, go fix it, make alert go away into the alert came in, now understand what's going on more holistically. What is the risk to the business? Was it a true or false positive? You know, your actions can range anywhere from okay, initiate incident response because this is real to let's tune the sim and so we don't get this alert again. And you have to be able to think through a lot of that stuff. So the training you need is a little bit different, but the knowledge you have from being on a help desk is really helpful because you kind of know what normal might look like or what might generate those alarms that end up being false positives. So to do that, here are a few kind of trainings and certs that I really like right now. First up is the Security Blue Team BTL1. I think this is a great entry level analyst certification. I think it covers a wide array of what most analysts will see in their new roles. And frankly, being a SOC analyst is probably where you're going to start on a blue team. Um, you could start on an engineering role if you have a big sysadmin background and want to dive straight into the tool side of things. That's definitely doable, but there's just more SOC positions open. So you'll probably end up in a SOC. But this cert is great because it covers fundamentals like what is security, right? Like just high level, what are we talking about here? It covers a solid phishing analysis segment. So, what tools can you use? How do you assess phishing? Things like that. You're going to see a lot of phishing on the SOC probably. Things like threat intelligence, it goes into lightly. It doesn't dive super far into threat intelligence, but it has a good amount of coverage in there. It touches on digital forensics, SIM management and usage, incident response, all the little things that you're probably going to touch on lightly as an analyst. The SIM segment is definitely really good, and it uses a Splunk, I believe. And you may not end up using Splunk, but learning how to use a SIM and what a SIM does is good no matter what. You're going to need to learn that if you're going to be on the SOC. Now, once you do that and you kind of have a grasp on stuff a little bit, I also very much like the anti-siphon training pay what you can courses. Obviously, I'm wearing one of their shirts. I'm a fan. Um, the three that I would suggest you definitely take if you're looking to be an analyst are the SOC core skills with John Strand, the Getting Started in Security with BHIS and MITRE ATT&CK, also with John Strand. And if you have time, the Active Defense and Cyber Deception one. I think this one is the most fun, but probably the least useful jumping into a SOC early on, but it is really good. The other ones are also good courses, are the ones I've taken anyway. There's a couple of these that have been added recently that I haven't done. But things like Getting Started in Packet Decoding, I think is really good. I haven't looked at or taken the reporting for pen testers or the intro to PCI yet. I'm sure they're great if they're like anything else. And I don't think most people need to be jumping into their CISSP if this is their first security role. So I'm not too worried about that one. These are pay what you can. So you just kind of pay whatever you can afford. And the more you pay, the more things you get. If you can afford the cyber range level, go for it. If you can't, that's cool too. Pay it forward later. Once you've taken those 3 courses plus the BTL one, I think all in, depending on how much you pay for these, you're still under the cost of like an A plus certification. So you're much much better off than taking your security plus. You have a knowledge that's much more appropriate for a SOC specifically versus generic security knowledge. And then if you have a little bit of extra money, um, I would throw it at Chris Sanders' effective information security writing course. I think this is a really great course. It's about $100. Teaches you how to write reports really well for the security environment. Teaches you all kinds of good stuff in relation to that. These are things that I make mandatory for my SOC more or less because I just really like it. Um, and that's it. Like, I think that if you can, and that's not a small amount of stuff. It'll take you months and months to work through all this stuff if it's new to you. So, I'd say even up to a year probably because, each of these things, if you're spending the time to not only take the course, but to practice it and apply some of that knowledge, yeah, you have a year's worth of work ahead of you. So, um, when you're building that foundation of knowledge, when you're sitting on that help desk, start putting this stuff together. All of these are very lab intensive, which is one thing I like about them. So you'll be in a lab, you'll be practicing with the tools. You're not just reading books. If you can take the pay what you can ones live online, I think that's fantastic. You have access to Discord, you can chat with people, you can do all that stuff. Definitely do those things. Um, I think you'll be off to a good start. I think this is a lot better than trying to just randomly pick a cert here. And then, for most of us, we're not going to be paying a whole bunch of money for things like GOX right out of the gate. Try to get a job where a company will pay for that stuff for you. They're just pretty pricey. And I don't really expect anybody to jump in and start paying that much money out of pocket to get on a SOC position. Um, and then kind of figure out what it is you want to specialize in. Once you're kind of there, you'll have access to a lot more as far as capability to make decisions on what area you want to really focus in. Maybe you decide, forensics is what you're all about and you dive into some forensics courses. Maybe it's incident handling. Maybe you do want to shift over to pen testing once you get your foot in the security door and you kind of understand how the blue team side of it works. You just want to start pushing some of that and getting into the red team side of things. That's all okay. Um, the one thing I would probably recommend against is doing things like boot camps just to grab a CISSP. It's a very well regarded cert for a lot of reasons. My perspective is that it's also just way overdone at this point. Lots of people have CISSPs that don't have the appropriate level of experience, and therefore they don't know how to apply the knowledge. Don't do that to yourself. It's an expensive cert you have to renew every year. Wait until you're several years in, truthfully, to go after something like that. In my opinion, it just doesn't help you if you have like $1,000 to spend on a cert. Go do all the ones that I said versus that one certification. You'll learn a lot more and you'll be able to apply it a lot better than something that's very managerial like the CISSP. Um, there are some other certs along the way you can get, things like the Security Plus. Again, it's just very um, academic. It's not super applicable like the ones I'm mentioning are. Things like the CEH, yeah, a lot of people like that kind of stuff, but I'm just not a huge fan of EC console certs right now for a lot of reasons. So I would just aim for some of these newer, more modern training groups like Security Blue Team, like Anti Siphon Training. I think they're sort of on the leading edge of what training is going to end up being. Um, yeah, so give those a shot. All right. Well, that's a wrap for the night. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Like, follow, share. Have a great night, everybody.